بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله أما بعد. I greet our listening audience, Mali students, with the greeting Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to our Thursday evening Quranic presentation. And we're staying with the project of comparing the thinking of Ibn Arabi with Imam W.D. Muhammad. And other sources may be included, but that's our main focus. And we're going to be looking at chapter 16, verse 75, as we go through chapter 16. We're on verse 75 now. And mostly we're looking at the comments that Ibn Arabi is making, the tafsir, the kind of tafsir he's making on these verses, and then we find the comparison of that thinking with Imam W.D. Muhammad. So we jump right in. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, chapter 16, verse 75. Daraba Allahu mathalan. Allah sets forth, Allah strikes. Daraba, literally, Allah strikes. An example, a parable, a simile, mathalan. Abdan, a slave. Mamlukan, also a word for slave. It would be the substitute for Abdan. Mamluk. There's a group of people in the history of Islam, they were called Mamluk. Mamluk. You find this is used outside of Quran. Mamluk. Says, La yaqdiru ala shay'in. Meaning he has no power over anything. This is the Abd, the Mamluk. This is the first part of the verse and the part that we'll be looking at. A slave that has no power over anything, over a thing. So the first part, Daraballahu Mathalan, he's speaking to what's in the parentheses until we get to the next parentheses. This bracket here until we get to the next bracket. Lil mujarradi wal muqayyidi. So here, al mujarradi wal muqayyadi, al muqayyadi. He's referring to something back here in the verse. So it would be the mathalan belonging to the mathalan. The example is going to be the free, the al-mujarrad, we could say the free, and the al-muqayyad. Al-muqayyad would be the one who's shackled. His mind is shackled. His being is shackled. The idea of a slave. The free and the slave. والمشرك والمشركي والموحدي. The mushriki is the polytheist, the one who makes association with Allah, the one God, Allah, the one. والموحدي is those who find unification in the creation that point to Allah being only one with no partners. This is the muwahhidi, the mushrik and the muwahhid. Now speaking, this is the mathalan he's given, the example. Now he gives the parentheses, abdan, says abdan, mamlukan. Two words for slave. Abdan, mamlukan. Muhibban, and this goes to the next parentheses, which is going to fill out the first paragraph here. So muhibban lighairi Allahi. One whose mamluk he loves lighairi Allahi, other than Allah. He gives love to other than Allah. Mu'assiran, I have these typos in here. I'm putting the vowel marks in for the students. So it would be mu'ass instead of, it's not mu'i, it's mu'ah. Mu'assiran, influential, one who's influencing him, lahu. He gives love to other than Allah, influenced by it, by his passions, influencing him through his passions, we could say, through his desire. فَإِنَّ الْمُقَيَّدَ, surely the shackled, those who are shackled, beset by something. Those who are shackled, their minds are tied to something. Yadinu bidaynihi. He obeys his obligations. Meaning he allows himself to be obligated to that thing and obey the obligations of that thing. وَيَصْدُرُ عَنْ حُكْمِهِ, and he proceeds. We could say his actions proceed. They originated from the thinking, the logic, the governance, the rule of that thing. Hukmihi. Yes, he feels obligated to it, and he's ruled by the thing that he's shackled to, the thing that he loves other than Allah. The kind of love he should give to Allah, he gives it to something else that's influencing him strongly by his passions, and it shackles the mind. The thing shackles the mind that he becomes obligated to it, and he proceeds from his actions, proceeds from the governance of that thing. Yatasarrafu bi amrihi, thereby we can say, and he behaves according to the demand of that thing. فَهُوَ, thus he is abduhu, he is its slave, the slave of the thing. He is his abd. إِذْ كُلُّ مَنْ أَحَبَّ شَيْئًا, then whoever, every one who loves something, a thing, you'll find he obeys it. Whatever you give your love to, in this sense, being shackled by it, he obeys it. وَإِذَا أَطَاعَهُ, and when he obeys it, فَقَدْ عَبَدَهُ, he worships it. He becomes a slave to it. Yes. Just stay with what we're presenting here, because it all connects all the way to the conclusion. If we need greater discussion, Tuesday at 7 o'clock. For the students, we have greater discussion on it. Okay? The second part, لَا يَقْدِرُ عَلَى شَيْءٍ. He's going to comment. The rest of this is commenting on this parenthesis. All of this we have said is about Abd al-Mamluk. That's what the Abd al-Mamluk is. Someone who loves, they give their love, their affection to something other than Allah, and it influences them. They influence through their passions and desires. It shackles the mind that they feel obligated to that thing, and by that thing controls it's controlled by the thinking, the logic, the rule of that thing. Now, La Yaqdiru ala Shay. He's going to comment on that. This is Ibn Arabi. So he says, Inna ad-dunya kazilli. Surely the dunya, the material world, this we say this world, the material world, the world, kazilli is like the shadow. Now we spoke about the shadow before. The shadow is like the shadow. This world is like the shadow. He's going to explain it all. إذا تبعته فاتك. When you follow it, فاتك, it escapes you. It eludes you. It escapes you. وَإِن تَرَكْتَهُ, and if you leave it, تَبَعَكَ. Think about the shadow. If you try to follow the shadow will escape you. Now, students, make a note here that we're going to give further explanation on Tuesday. Fataka, when the shadow fataka, it escapes you, and tabaka, it follows you. When you follow it, and then when it follows you. I'm not going to take a lot of time on it. I want you all to learn to read the Quran, and we're looking at sources related to the Quran that give you a greater understanding and comprehension of the Quran itself. Look at how Arabic defines Arabic. So I don't want to say too much and cause you to lose focus. So these points we can elaborate on. Ask the question about them, and then we will elaborate on it if you're interested. If you're not interested, I don't want to just entertain. Say things for entertainment while you lay back and you don't make an effort. You have to make an effort. As a student, you have to be the one seeking knowledge, not sitting waiting knowledge to come to you. Let's continue. فَإِنَّ تَابِعَ الدُّنْيَا. Surely the following of the material world, this visible world, ad-dunya, we'll say this manifested world, the dunya, ahkaru qadran. Ahkaru qadran. It is the most contemptible in terms of value. Men ad-dunya, of the world. It's the most contemptible in terms of the world, the dunya, in terms of value. Compared to the al-akhirah, the corresponding world to this manifested world, which is the that, when we talk about the shadow. It has greater value. وَأَقَلُّ خَطَرًا. And it's very small, the smallest, the most insignificant khataran in terms of importance, significance, very small. It's smaller when compared to the hereafter. When I say hereafter, compared to the corresponding non-visible world. On this side, I'm not talking the other side. On this side, it's smaller, insignificant. The spiritual world, the spiritual existence. We've talked about this. As you all are listening week after week, you have to keep these ideas. These are very consistent ideas that we're given that we don't have to continue to elaborate over them. وَإِنَّ الدُّنْيَا, surely the world, ظِلٌّ ذَائِلٌ, it's a transitory shadow. ظِلٌّ is a shadow. This world is a shadow. If you recall how we define the shadow. ذَائِلٌ is transitory. For who, where does it, he's going to explain, ظِلٌّ, ظِلُّ, and ظِلِّ. It is the shadow of the shadow. Listen very closely. This world is a transitory shadow. It is the shadow of the shadow. وَلَا ظِلٌّ لِظِلِّ الظِلِّ. A shadow that belongs to the shadow of the shadow. Right? That there is no shadow. Let me say it that way. If I put the fat out here, it'll put more emphasis on it. But no shadow to the shadow of the shadow. This world is the shadow of the shadow, and there is no shadow for the shadow of the shadow. Let me explain this to you. Let us look at the shadow as a sign. Here we're given the knowledge, now let's look at it as a sign of it. Your physical body, we said in the previous presentation, is the shadow of your hakika, your true reality, your being. It's the shadow of your being. And this physical body, it has a shadow. So the body is the shadow of the reality, and then the sun strikes it and it makes a shadow on the ground. That shadow is the shadow of a shadow. The shadow on the ground is the shadow of the shadow. But it cannot make a shadow. It cannot produce a shadow. The hakika can produce a shadow. The shadow can produce a shadow. But the third shadow, the second shadow, has no shadow. I hope you understand. So there's no shadow for the shadow of the shadow. The world casts a shadow, and there is no shadow for that shadow. The world itself is a shadow. That's what we're saying. Okay, let's continue. Better. However, we could say, as ظِلُّ لِذَاتِ, the shadow belongs to the being, the hakika, the being, the true one. Whereas zatun, and there is no zatun for it, meaning that the shadow that doesn't make a shadow. The first shadow belongs to a that. It belongs to a that. But the second shadow, there is no that. The shadow on the ground, there's no that to it, because it's the shadow of a shadow. It's not the true reality. What's on the ground is not the shadow of your true reality. It's the shadow of you, the physical you, not the spiritual you. So the that is the spiritual. So the shadow belongs to the spiritual. That's the first shadow. But there is no that for it. There is no that for the shadow that doesn't have a shadow. Therefore, فَلَا مُلْكٌ, there is no governance for it. It can only proceed as the thing that it's the shadow of. The shadow on the ground can only proceed and move according to the body. But it has no shadow itself. It has no governance itself. Wala kudratu. And there is no power to it. It has no power. It has nothing. Therefore, many of us define ourselves by not the that. We don't define ourselves by the that. We don't define ourselves by the first shadow, the shadow of the that, which is your physical body. No. We define ourselves by the shadow that has no shadow. The shadow that can produce it. The shadow that's attached to something material. It has to be attached to the material. And that is the only value we see in that shadow is black. All shadows are black. So when we say we're black, in this context, we're only saying we're a shadow of the shadow. And you're shackled by something material. Because only the material thing can make the shadow. And the shadow has to appear on the material. And that material is called adunya. I hope you understand. So now let's look at how Imam W. Muhammad comments on it. I didn't put it in Arabic this week. He says, the core of their life, this is the slave. The shadow of the shadow is the slave. Nothing is more attached to slavery than that. The core of their life is assessed by the influences of the world. Dunya or shadow. It's influence of the world. Now you can see how we're comparing the mind of Ibn Arabi and Imam W. Muhammad. He continues, therefore, the husband has no Islamic authority in his home. He's just the shadow of a shadow. He has no Islamic authority in his home. The wife has no Islamic authority over her children. Given this conceptual idea, the Imam is given. And the children have no Islamic conscience to check each other. Simply because they are vacant vessels, inviting the influence to come in and possess their souls. Nothing, now I'm going to add to this, comment on this. Nothing but the slave to media. Media, they're more slaves to the media than anything else. They give their whole life to the media. Their whole existence is dependent upon the media. Their whole philosophy of life is given to them by the media. The media makes them, the media breaks them. Their actions are proceeds from the media. Think about it. The world, that's their world. It possessed their souls. We have people thinking, back to Imam W. Muhammad, we have people thinking they are Muslims. And they are nothing but a shadow. Nothing but a shadow. Actually, a shadow of a shadow. A shell of a person. They have become shadows of the shadow. You should be working to instill the teachings of the Quran in your life. You want to be free and not enslaved? Then you should be working to instill the teachings of the Quran in your life. Learning, I'm adding to this, learning to read the Quran and reflect on it with your own mind. That you have control of your own mind and that you're giving your love and your attention to Allah because it's speaking to you when you're reading the Quran. It's not Muhammad the Prophet speaking to you, it's Allah speaking to you. You're giving your love to Allah and Allah speaks to you and gives you a new spirit can come in you. A new life can come in you by reading the Quran for yourself, not translation. Don't depend on translations. Don't even depend on my translations. Read it for yourself. Learn to read for yourself if you want to be free in this world. We've been shackled for so long, we don't know how to become free. We can't free ourselves and nobody else can free us. Only Allah can free us. And that is with the Quran. Going back to the Imam. The life of your children, your husband, your wife, your grandmother, everybody within your reach, they should be given the Quran. And that should be our obligation. Our obligation is not to the media, mainstream media, social media, etc. That's not our obligation. Our obligation is to Allah. Our obligation should be to the Quran. I thank you for your time. Assalamu alaikum.